I know Alvin Henderson committed to Penn State yesterday. I'm not buying it.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. We are dapping it up on this Friday with the Darrell, Dapprish, Montgomery radio legend. We'll hear from Jayson Jones, Auburn defensive lineman, later in the show, as well as more portal speculation. But first, Alvin Henderson, one of the elite running backs in the 2025 class, the Elba, Alabama standout, chose Penn State over Auburn and Miami yesterday, Darrell. And this is the same guy that every time we get an open viewing window at practice, he's there. He's always at Auburn. I know he picked Penn State yesterday. I'm not buying it, Darrell. I just don't buy it. I still think Alvin Henderson ends up in Auburn's class when it's all said and done.
I agree. This is a guy that just really loves the recruiting process. He loves being wooed. He loves being courted. And it just seems like the last place that he's at is the one that he is most passionate about. Look, we heard 2 weeks ago he was a lock to Auburn. Then it changed that he was a lock to Miami. People didn't know and that are in the know. Auburn thought they lost him to Miami. And then he goes to Penn State, and all of a sudden it's Penn State. But yet back channels, we still know that he's communicating with Auburn recruits, Auburn players. He'll probably be around Auburn as much as he was before. I don't buy it either. I think he loves the process. He loved the drama of today at his high school, pulling out the Penn State stuff. I think that he ends up at Auburn if Auburn allows itself to continue to play silly games. At some point, the coaching staff's going to be like, you know what? We got a couple other guys like Deere and Turbo Rogers and some other guys that we're looking at, and we just can't afford to keep playing the waiting game. Get on board or we're going in another direction. And I think that's very feasible, to be honest with you.
Yeah, running back isn't, it's important to some extent, but like there's a lot of good running backs out there. And I also think running back is a position that you get into the portal if you really, really needed one. So I don't think it's necessarily like a priority, but Alvin Henderson's a good one. Like, if you're rating running backs, like you want Alvin Henderson on your team, if you can make that happen. And I prefer his game to all the guys that you just mentioned, but the drop off isn't tremendous. It's not drastic, but this is just kind of a thing where like you don't want all the hours and the time and the resources have been devoted to making sure Alvin Henderson felt comfortable at Auburn to where he could come to Auburn from Elba seemingly like every other week for the last several months. You don't want that to go to waste, right? I mean, there's some investment in this already from a time standpoint. And he clearly likes Auburn or he wouldn't be up here all the time. So I'm just not buying it. I think Penn State feels really fired up about their win from yesterday, and they should. They should. They had this very talented four-star running back from the outside looking in fall into their lap and say, wow, this is great. How exciting. But when it comes to early signing day in December, I'm still predicting that he ends up as an Auburn Tiger.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that part of the draw for Alvin Henderson to Penn State was in his words yesterday when he said, I want to go out of state somewhere far and continue a tradition. That's all great until it gets to crunch time. Mm-hmm. And I think comfort and familiarity matters. And again, he's been around the complex nonstop. He knows a lot of the players that have committed. He's comfortable with them. I just think it's right now, it's falling in love with the process and being wooed. Yeah. And a traditional place like Penn State for a small time, from Elba. I think all that is just, he's seeing stars right now. And when it all comes,
and enjoy it, Alvin. Seriously,
and enjoy it.
You only get to do this once. Now with the portal, maybe you get to do it more than once, but still, enjoy it. Because, I mean, what a great story. A kid from a small town like Elba sets all of these records, and now all of the big programs throughout all of college football want you. Like, that's a great story. Fortunately for Auburn, that story's not over yet. And I do think it will end with him signing with the Auburn Tigers. As far as perception goes with this, Darrell, obviously he was kind of seen as an Auburn lock. He goes to Penn State, and then with all of the narrative around Hassan Longstreet, it seems like he's going to Texas A&M now. From a perception standpoint, is there any concern in your mind about where Auburn is on the recruiting trail?
It's not. There's not. I mean, there's the recruiting game there's hits and there's misses, and Auburn gets a big recruit in Cardi Smith that you guys talked about. There's some other guys that could pop at any time now. You look at the recruiting rankings. I think Auburn's pretty much set at 8 or 9,
7, 8, 9, depending. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, now if it's a position of need, you're going to have to get a quarterback. And if it's not Longstreet, is it going to be, Lacey? Is it going to be Lewis? I mean, there's a lot of different options that I think Auburn's going to have to get one. And I think Auburn will get a running back or two as well. I'm not concerned about a few of the misses because Auburn's had too many hits. And at the end of the day, if you start seeing a trend and you start, missing 4, 5, 6 in a row with guys that you felt like, when you start losing out on guys that were always crystal balled to you or were locks, then there's something internally going on that you should be concerned about. If you're in the mix along with some other schools and you lose out to that school, it's nothing that I would be too concerned about at this point.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you. So in regards to the future of Auburn recruiting, I think they're in a good spot. But from a perception standpoint, because with recruiting, perception is reality. I was worried about some potential backlash with Alvin going to Penn State, but I haven't really seen it because so many people are like, we'll see. We'll see. I've never seen, I shouldn't say never, but I'm having a hard time thinking of another commitment like this where folks have been like, I don't think so. I don't buy it. I don't believe you. It's kind of
understand too that when you fall in love with the recruiting game, and you love the process, there's nothing more dramatic and more special than flipping. Flipping has become something that goes to a whole nother level when these kids flip. They get to experience the rush and the adrenaline of being loved and choosing a school all over again.
Sure.
So now it's gotten to the point where flipping is the new changing of the hat, on signing day or that kind of thing. So there's a process out there and there's a pathway where being able to flip is so dramatic and so beloved and so wow that just keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right. The transfer portal opens next week. We talked about some offensive guys who could be portaling out earlier in the week. What about the defensive side of things? Darrell, there's a chance it's not as active as we think it could be. We'll discuss that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Darrell, can you imagine buying a part for your car, truck, or SUV from anywhere else? Can you?
I could not. I absolutely could not imagine that. No.
I'm with you. I don't even want a part from anywhere else. eBay Motors, they understand that the formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive with passion, drive, and patience. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits. They've got it all. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home that huge win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Darrell, when you talk about the transfer portal opening next week, the assumption is across the board, not just with Auburn, but all throughout college football, that a ton of guys are going to enter the portal. They're calling this upcoming window potentially monumental. And we'll see if it happens. But a lot of national folks are saying this. We'll see if we see that kind of impact at Auburn. But as far as the defensive side of the ball, I have a hard time seeing a position group that could really be negatively impacted by the transfer portal. When you look at the defensive line, a lot of the older guys, I think, are solid to Auburn. And then the young guys, they're obviously not going to go anywhere. So you look at Gage Keys and Terrell Carter, who just transferred here. Jayson Jones seems solid. We'll talk to him in a few minutes. Zacchaeus Walker is probably the biggest guy that, like, okay, maybe he could go. Like, maybe he's a 50-50 toss-up guy. But the assumption also is they're going to bring in defensive linemen through the portal. So if you lose a Zacchaeus Walker, or I don't think Darren Reed's going anywhere, but if you lose one of those guys, you're going to replace them as far as impact.
Yeah, I think too, we talked about even if everybody stays, I mean, isn't there a need for depth to add maybe one or two, even if nobody goes anywhere in the portal? I think you
have to. Yeah, you have to.
You don't want to count on the youngsters and the young guys to provide depth. You want them to come along at a pace that you're comfortable with, that they can acclimate themselves to big time SEC football. Yeah. So I think even if everybody says, I'm staying, I'm committed, I'm all into Auburn, I love this place, I still think you go grab one or two in the portal when it opens.
I think you have to. As far as the guys playing outside or edge, Jalen McLeod, he's pretty set. Keldrick Falk, I can't see him going anywhere. The younger guys, Amaris Williams, Jamonta Waller, Joe Phillips, I don't think they're going anywhere. Brenton Williams is a name that would not surprise me. And that may be a mutual thing. That may be a mutual parting of ways if Brenton Williams were to enter the portal, a guy that we haven't talked about a ton. Had an okay day, good for him. And we'll see, if he stays, great. If not, I think they're going to have to get another body as an outside, whether it's a strong side defensive end or a buck pass rusher, regardless of who it is. They're going to have to get a guy here anyway. Brenton Williams is the guy in that room where I'm like, yeah, that would make the most sense.
That's a shame because I thought he played really well in A-Day.
Sure.
He did have some tackles. He made some plays at A-Day that I was like, I can see now where, so I would hope that, he just progresses and gets his upward trend of development. But because I like some of the plays he made, but it does make sense with the youth coming into the room. And then, the two guys that aren't going anywhere, as you mentioned, with Falk and McLeod.
Right. Linebacker, I think it's a similar thing. Wesley Steiner is a guy that I think would make sense. Talked to somebody earlier in the week. They don't think Wesley Steiner is going anywhere. So once again, everybody has a different situation. Some people like being at Auburn. Some people want to play and get on the field. Some people, it's a path to the NFL thing. Some people, it's an NIL thing. Academics are obviously a part of this too. There's a million different reasons why somebody would either choose to stay or choose to leave. So we don't know. We don't know why that could be, but with guys like Wesley Steiner and Robert Woodyard, those are the two linebackers that I'm looking at. Woodyard, going into spring, I would have said, yes, he is a prime candidate to leave. But the last week and a half of spring, and then we saw a little bit of it on A-Day, it's like that guy can play, and he's solidly in the 2 deep. So to me, his path to playing time is pretty clear at this point.
Two surprises right out of the gate with that. Very surprised that Steiner is being, kind of projected to stay. I thought for, almost.
And this was one conversation, this was one conversation. I kind of asked him to speculate a little bit, but I once again, going into spring, I kind of expected, I expected both of these guys to be gone, and that may not be the case.
And the other surprise is Woodyard has played so well and has kind of emerged getting into the 2 deep, watching him in the open viewing windows at practice. We saw him kind of get in the 2 deep, and then he kind of validated that with the way he played at A-Day and how many snaps he got. So I'd be very disappointed with all the progress that Woodyard made if he ended up going, and that would be a very big surprise to me.
Right. And then lastly, with defensive backs, I don't know who would leave. The young guys seem to be all happy. I don't know how they wouldn't be. They're all playing kind of more than I expected them to. And then the older guys, I can't see them going anywhere. Champ Anthony appears to be a starter. He's not going to go anywhere, I don't think. Caleb Wooden, Laquan Robinson just got here. And then obviously Keontae Scott and Jaron Thompson, this will be their last year of eligibility. I just have a hard time pointing to anybody in the defensive back room where it says, yeah, it makes sense for you to leave right now.
Yeah, we've heard that J.D. Rim, that's a given, right? That he's already planning to enter the portal. I don't think, he hasn't officially yet.
I assume, but he's not on the roster, so.
Right, so that's one. But other than that, yeah, that's amazing. You think about all the young guys and all the returning guys to mesh the way they have and all be comfortable to say, hey, I feel like we've got a good room and I'm not going to get as much playing time, but I'm going to stay anyway and contribute. is pretty phenomenal in this day and age in college football. And that'll make Charles Kelly extremely happy to know that all those guys, every single one of them, looks like they're coming back.
I think there's a chance, Darrell, that one of these younger guys enters the portal. But if they do, I almost want to say it's because another school's in their rear, whether it's through back channels or whatever it may be. It's like, hey, your path to playing time is quicker here, and we've got a nice NIL package headed your way if that were to happen. And that could happen in any position group, right? And that's kind of the element of this that's impossible to predict, but it's probably going to happen somewhere, right? And the place that would make most sense is probably the defensive back room, because there's so many young guys that aren't really slated to play a ton, but this year, but they're expected to play maybe next year or the following year. And maybe there's a situation elsewhere where it's like, no, you could play right away here, and we'll throw you a little money your way.
Because the NIL aspect of it has got to be a factor. You know that Kayan Lee and Keontae Scott, all the rumblings and rumors when the season ended last year were treated right. They were taken care of. And so then you look at a guy like Thompson coming from Texas and what it took. I mean, it's just, there's only so much NIL availability in that room. That would be a reason where someone would say, look, if I could get X more by leaving and getting a little more playing time, yes. And that's the scenario where you don't blame a kid. And that's what the portal is there for. But that still leaves you just a ton of able and capable bodies in the room that, you know, I cannot wait to watch this secondary play in the fall, especially with the influence under Charles Kelly. Yeah.
And I kind of get the feeling they're going to not be afraid to add another defensive back via the portal.
Right.
Like, I don't think that would be a crazy thing either.
I mean, let's just say it. I mean, it's on a board out there at USC. I mean, it's not like we're speculating. USC insiders on the equivalent of their message boards and their moderators are speculating that the Fagans kid from Alabaster that has a brother that Auburn's recruiting is going to enter the portal, and his likely destination is Auburn. He's a corner. He's going to be a sophomore. So that's not us saying it. That's USC's moderators and writers saying it. So we'll see if that comes to pass or not.
Yeah, and he projects as a nickel, which Auburn has a bunch of safeties and several corners. That nickel position is like, if Keontae is staying an outside corner, like, who's the true backup for Champ Anthony? Kind of makes sense, right? Like, it kind of makes sense. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, it's going to be a crazy few weeks. I can't wait to see it all unfold. And so the portal opens Tuesday. Portal opens Tuesday. And, you know, we're not going to make the same mistake as we did last year. We kind of thought it would open and then guys would hop in quickly, but that wasn't the case. People kind of took their time and hung out on the portal for a little bit. I'm expecting that to be the case this year, but still, it's going to be a wild ride, folks. It's going to be a wild ride, and we're going to cover it as best as we can every single day. So coming up, a conversation with Jayson Jones, recaps spring, also talks about the newcomers and what stood out about each of them over the course of the last few weeks on the defensive line and the offensive line. A lot of good stuff about Connor Lew in there as well. Before we jump into that, Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Check me out on X, Dap6410, Wednesdays and Fridays here on Locked On Auburn. And just dropped yesterday a new basketball article on Auburn Daily, just kind of a look back and a look ahead.
Yep, the DAP recap. There's going to be a lot of those coming at auburndaily.com, so go ahead and get in the habit of checking out that site every single day. Darrell Dapprish hanging out with us as he always does. Coming up, Jayson Jones, recap spring. And today's edition of Locked On Auburn is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which means it makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Didn't think it was possible. They found a way. Prices on Game Time, they actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. So I think a lot of folks that listen to this show are Braves fans. And it's like, man, the Braves play in a few hours. Let's go ahead and get tickets. Let's go ahead and get tickets and catch a game tonight. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase with the Game Time app. Of course, the app is free in your phone's app store, and you can use that code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Jayson Jones hanging out with us for a few minutes. spring is now behind us. Your overarching thoughts on how spring went for you, Jayson?
I think it honestly went really well for me. I really found myself as a person, as a pass rusher too. Throughout the days, just playing, I feel like I've gotten gradually better and better and better. So I mean, and that's what spring ball is for. It isn't just for the older guys, for the young guys too, to see what they got.
Mm-hmm. As far as you kind of taking that step forward, you've talked on here about developing moves as a pass rusher. Is that where you saw the most improvement, or was it other things too?
Oh no, most definitely a pass rush. I mean, just my coach Vontrell, I love him to death. He tells me all the time, know what type of pass rusher you are. I mean, you have size, so you should know what type of pass rusher you are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Vontrell, man, he seems pretty animated. We only get to see a little sliver of practice, once a week or so. But I think it was the last Tuesday of spring. I think he was actually yelling at you, like praising you. I think you did a good pass rush move or something. And you could hear him say, "There we go, Jayson." And it was just, his voice was so booming, so large. And it seems like everybody kind of feeds off of his energy.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, if no one's bringing energy, he's bringing energy. If there's already energy, he's bringing more energy. It's just he's just an energy guy. And he's very person oriented, and he wants the best for everybody. So when he sees something good, no matter who you are, he gonna point it out. He gonna celebrate for you. You always want to celebrate the small victories, because those small victories lead up to the big victories.
Yeah. How would you grade your performance on A-Day? It was kind of an interesting format with the offense starting down in that 27-0 hole, but obviously they kind of climbed their way back thanks to a ton of field goals, Jayson. But how would you grade your performance specifically on A-Day?
I think regardless of stats, I mean, I think I'll say about average.
Okay.
I mean, the ball hit, where the ball hit, and the offense made a lot of good plays down the field, especially with Cam Coleman. He's so good. He is so good.
Yeah.
Even in practice, dude. He's just so good. But besides that, I say about average.
Okay.
I didn't really get a lot of snaps. No one really got a lot of snaps on the D line, except for the young guys like Malik and D Reed and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like the defensive line and really the defensive front seven as a whole, whether it was the ones or the twos that were in there, they really stepped up in the red zone, which forced all of those field goals by Towns over the course of the afternoon. Did you guys do anything differently schematically once it hit the red zone, or was it just, hey, we got to step up and force a stop here?
No, we don't think about we got to do something schematically. I mean, first off, we shouldn't let them down there. Second off, you just got to bow up and man up. You know what I'm saying? You got to don't let them score. If you can hold them to field goals, you're doing your job. But we want to hold them to no score at all. So
sure.
As a D line, I can speak for the whole spring too. I feel like we've really found our identity as a D line. After losing Marcus and losing Justin, I feel like we found our identity, and we're getting better as the day goes on, especially with the young guys. I understand they're young, but they're very talented too. Yeah.
Coach Freeze said after A-Day to the media, he said that, he was asked about the transfer portal, and he said wide receiver and defensive line, we're thin there. We need more guys in the portal.
Yeah.
What does that do from your perspective when it's like, hey, yeah, we're going to try to get more defensive linemen to kind of help bolster this group and build that depth? What does that say to you?
I mean, I look at it as a good thing, truthfully. I mean, I don't look at it as a bad thing. Oh, don't bring guys in. No, we need as many people as we possibly can, because it's better in this league when you play 9 defensive linemen or 8 defensive linemen, opposed to you only playing 4 or 5. And then if you're only playing 4 or 5, then that's when injury comes into play, and then bam, you're down at 3 now.
Yeah.
So you want to have as many guys as you possibly can to play as much as they can in different positions. So one guy can play nose and tackle. He can move around. It just makes us more versatile.
The makeup of this roster is several positions. Defensive line is like this. Linebacker is like this. I guess receivers kind of like this as well, where it's like, you've got the returners that are these older guys that have 1 or 2 years left of eligibility. And then it's a bunch of freshmen, talented freshmen, but a bunch of freshmen. There's not a whole lot of guys to bridge the gap here. Does that come into play as far as, conversations with you guys where it's like, okay, it's the old guys and it's the young guys, and it's like, maybe you guys kind of poke each other about that, or is that ever really even come up?
I mean, not really. I mean, obviously, when a guy has more experience than one person, I always say, like, game experience is the best experience, because if you don't play in the game, you actually you don't really understand the speed, and you don't understand the feel. No, it doesn't really come up like that. I mean,
Okay.
you know who's young, you know who's old. I mean, it's whatever at that point. I mean, you still got to play ball. We brought you in for a reason. So
right. As far as the young guys, you mentioned a few of them: Malik Blockton, TJ Lindsey, Amaris Williams.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you see from these guys over the last week or two of spring?
I think they've grown a lot. I mean, I know I can speak for Malik. He realized that this isn't high school anymore pretty fast. Like the things that you did in high school isn't going to work here. You know what I'm saying? So he's learned to strike better, stay low, do different things, and and this is only spring ball. Imagine what he's going to do during the season. Fall camp, he has a whole summer under his belt. And that's the good thing about early enrolling. So you have that experience moving into the season.
Yeah. When you look at Malik, do you see any of his brother? Do you see any Marcus Harris in him?
Not so much football, but not in a bad way. But it's funny.
Yeah, they're different players, sure.
But they act the exact same. They talk the exact same way. They move the exact same way. They walk the exact same way. Like everything is identical to each other. You know what I'm saying? But they do play a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. That's cool. That's a cool note there. As far as the older guys that transferred in, Gage Keys, Trill Carter, what have you seen from them over the last few weeks, Jason?
Gage has done an amazing job at the tackle role. I mean, he's very physical, knows how to strike and get rid of blockers fast. Trill, just don't let the size fool you, because he'll run through your face. It don't matter who you are.
Yeah.
Again, a physical specimen. They're both going to help us so much during the season. They're both really good and have a lot of experience.
Jason, I've been impressed with what I've seen from this offensive line that you guys are going up against every single day. Can you tell a difference with, I assume you're lining up against Connor Liu a ton. What's the biggest difference from him now versus a year ago?
He's just a whole lot stronger and smarter. I mean, that's with any center when you give him experience. He's seen stuff now. He's seen other people, so he knows how to do different things. Again, he's a whole lot stronger. He has a whole year under his belt and spring ball too. And that also goes back on the fact that I say, like, game experience is best experience. I mean, like I said, when you see different looks, it helps you grow as a player.
Yeah, makes sense. As far as these new defensive coaches, we talked about Von Trell being, the new leader of this defensive line group. But as far as implementing this new defense under Coach Durkin, what stands out about this new defensive scheme for you guys up front?
I really do love how it's aggressive. Like, we're not playing conservative, but you're going after it every single down. Doesn't even matter. We're bringing somebody, or just our demeanor changes when we attack. And that's what I love about Durkin's defense.
Thank you so much to Jason. Thank you so much to Darrell for hanging out with us today. Please like the video. Please subscribe, and we will see you on Monday. This has been Locked On Auburn.